that lie in wait, or by the darkness itself. And so the darkest place that you can imagine would be in the valley under a shadow. And so David paints the picture of being in the darkest place you can imagine. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. And then he explains why he is comforted by God's presence, because your rod and your staff, they comfort me. The shepherd carried the staff, the rod, in order to guide the sheep. Right? And so sometimes I have a little hook on it, you'll see the whole pictures. Well, sheep stray and gonna get them back. Right? But the rod is not for the same use as the staff. Sometimes the sheep stray, and so you use the rod to bring them back with discipline. Sometimes the predators come out of the dark, and so the staff is for self-defense. And so what David in that one verse says is, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, but yea, if I walk through the darkest places in my life that I can imagine, I don't have to fear evil, because God is with me. He saves me from the outside predators that would destroy me, but he also saves me from myself and my own tendencies to destroy myself when I'm in the darkness. And so if you ever sink into the darkness of whatever would cause you depression or despair, you don't have to be afraid of the dark, because God will protect you from the predators on the outside, and he'll protect you from the danger within.
I've heard a sermon about that 23rd Psalm,
yes,
and it enlightened me, because there cannot be a shadow without light.
Without light, absolutely.
Cannot be a shadow.
And so that's a part of what I went into, is that the idea that there's light somewhere. It's being blocked by your immediate view. Right. And so the light is in the distant view. Right. It has to be a blockage in the immediate view, which causes the shadow.
Right.
So it is with our lives. Sometimes, overall, we can understand that God looks out, and God is overall, and his watch care is constantly present. We keep that in the distant view. Sometimes life gets in the way. And sometimes these problems block in the immediate view. And so, like any shade that stands between you and the sun, it creates a shadow. So there's a lot there that hopefully I'm still massaging, and we'll put it in chapter form. That'll come out. But I decided to give a little snippet here and include it as a part of this devotion. And it's called Grace to Guide. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. That's the portion that I used. If you're going to travel, you'd better learn how to follow directions. We're starting off rocky already. I'm going somewhere, I promise you. I'm going somewhere. I've learned that one the hard way, over and over again. I've lost track of how many times I've gotten lost. The cities and circumstances vary, but the story is usually the same. With a guidance system staring me in the face, I set out on my journey. I'm fairly confident because, after all, I know where I'm going. The GPS is programmed. There's gas in the car. And I have lots of experience traveling along roads just like this one. There's no way I cannot reach my destination. And so I set out with all the promise of a faithful journey. The directions seem simple. the routine gets boring, the road looks lonely, and I get distracted. At some point, it happens. Not every time, but often enough. At some point, I get distracted, and I get lost. The GPS is programmed. There's gas in the car. I have lots of experience traveling along roads just like this one, and yet I am lost because I did not follow directions. Getting from one place to another seems simple. So why aren't we better at it? It's really not that hard. We should be able to make progress, and yet that's not always the case, especially when traveling down this particularly difficult and windy road called life. Every trip starts out the same. We know where we want to go, and we have experience traveling, and yet every person who has found themselves lost at any point in life will confess, if they were honest with you, and themselves for that matter, that they started getting lost the minute they stopped following the directions. Look at God's Word, and you'll see them. The directions. They seem so simple. Everything is clear and straightforward. Although we have a tendency to complicate and muddle it, the law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. And speaking of simple, that's exactly what God's directions are. They may be difficult to accept, but they are not difficult to understand. In fact, they're just the opposite. No layers, very little nuance, and no complications. It's all so simple. So simple, in fact, that the routine gets boring, the road looks lonely, and we get distracted, and we get lost. I had to pause there because it just popped into my mind. Those directions are simple, are they not? They're so simple that we take them for granted. I was out late last night with some friends because them boys, out of the 5 of us, 2 of them needed some relationship advice. They're married, and both of them said, "Well, I'm done. Fool this woman no more." I said, "All right, let's go out. Let's talk about it." So the whole group got together and we talked about it, and they took turns complaining. I said, "Well, I'm done. If she did this, and she did that, and she just stopped doing this, and she won't stop doing that." And I said, "Okay, let them talk. I just ask questions because I said, listen, I'm not a counselor by trade. I've just been where you guys probably don't want to be. Right? That's my only qualification. Right? So in order to help you stay away from where I am, where you probably don't want to be, let me ask you a few questions." I said, "Well, what did she? I know she said a lot, and I know you didn't hear most of it. But if you had to tell me in one sentence what she wants, what did she say?" And they go round and round and round. "Yeah, she won't stop talking." And she goes, "I know she won't stop. I know. I did it for 10 years. I understand. But if you had to tell me in one sentence what she wants, what did she say?" And the majority of the time, it's either that or they do know, but they don't want to do it. But it's really something simple. It's really something simple. And that pride gets in the way, and self rises up, in some variation of, and we've all done it, men and women, some variation of, "You ain't gonna tell me what to do." We've all been in there. Listen, I'm grown. I am past 40 grown. Okay, I'm gonna get to 50 before I get to 40 again. Bro. The only mama I had is in an urn sitting on my mantelpiece. Okay? You not her. Okay, so you not going to tell me what to do. Right? Somebody, amen. But in that, don't we sometimes reject the simple? Because sometimes all they really are asking for is, well, I'd really like it if you did X. I'd really like it if you don't leave the dishes in the sink to crust over. That's true. I really like it. So I ain't telling you fill the dishwasher all the time. All I'm saying is if you put it in the dish, put it in the sink, and there's food on it, run some water. Rinse it. You can leave it there. I'm good. Just rinse it so that it's not hard and crusty. Simple. But that can start an argument if I come in and say, well, you had attitude. I don't like your attitude. I'm not your dishwasher. I'm a grown man. I can do what I want. Matter of fact, if I want to leave 10 dishes in there, I pay bills in the house. I bought those dishes. I can live. See? And it begins to escalate. It begins to escalate. Well, you might have bought those dishes, but you didn't cook that food. And if you want somebody to cook food for you on the dishes again, you'll wash them. Well, I ain't got to. I ain't got to eat your food. Popeye's got a new chicken sandwich. I'll go get two of them. Well, you go out to Popeye's. Matter of fact, you stay there. Right? You stay right there in that line. You and Popeyes have yourself a good life. I don't need that confusion in my life. And it can escalate when it starts from something simple. We treat our relationship with God the same way. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor.
Don't lie.
Don't lie. Tell the truth. Where is the complication in that? But we can make it, we can manufacture something, can we not? Especially when it comes to what we want to do. Well, God didn't stutter. But somehow when it gets to us, we get hard of hearing. And what we have failed to realize is every time I deviate from those simple directions, I get lost. There's no way I can avoid God's simple stuff. All you tell me to do is rinse the dishes. There's no way I can avoid God's simple stuff and still have a productive, happy relationship with Him. No more than I can avoid the simple stuff with my wife, girlfriend, husband, or boyfriend and still have a productive, happy relationship with them. Making sense? And so, being lost can be frustrating and upsetting. I mean, who wouldn't be upset after missing that obvious exit? Get lost with a backseat driver, and you'll be driven to the point of madness. They may not say it, but suggestions like, oh, this looks familiar, and I've seen that sign before, will remind you that we're lost, and it's all your fault. By the way, if you are that co-pilot, allow me to assure you that you are not helping. Just FYI. But as upset as I am, the truth remains. I didn't follow the directions. Neither did you. We did our own thing, went our own way, got distracted, and missed the turn. Driving faster won't fix it.
Ooh.
And neither will yelling at the other passengers.
Whoa.
Turning up the music might drown out the internal alarms that remind you that you're going in the wrong direction. But none of the above will fix it. We're lost. And we didn't follow the directions. I said none of the above would fix the situation, but I never said the situation could be fixed. The same guidance system I tend to ignore knows just how to deal with people like me. Sometimes it will simply remind me that I've taken a wrong turn with just a hint of attitude that I don't appreciate. And attempt to convince me to turn around. Other times, when I make a wrong turn, the GPS will do something called recalculating.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
It will take into account the fact that I didn't follow the directions. And it will give me opportunities to get back on track. No matter how lost I get, the guidance system will either recalculate or remind me of the original plan. What it never does is leave me alone.
Okay.
What it never does is leave me alone. God's instructions are there to be followed and should be followed. But what if you haven't followed them? Now I stop preaching to you and start preaching to me. What if you haven't followed directions? What if you've made mistakes? What if you've gone your own way? Sometimes God will recalculate and give you the opportunity to get to where you're supposed to be, where you're supposed to go, without retracing your steps and reliving the pain of your past. Other times, God will remind you of the original plan. And like Jonah, you will have to go to Nineveh. I've been through both. I'm sure you have too. Sometimes we find ourselves so far outside the will of God, and God will allow us to start from where we are and live a new life. I get upset with folks who don't recognize that portion of God's grace in their life, because sometimes they forget that life wasn't always like this for you. You started a new life. And so you ought to be patient with others who are starting a new life. Pastors get that all the time. Somebody walks in, they walk in dressed well, matching, smelling good, they'll sit up straight, eloquent, and you can present yourself any way you want. I can present myself to you as eloquent, educated, erudite. Y'all really don't know if I graduated high school.
True.
You ain't got no proof. You have not seen my diploma. You met me, and based off of what you see, and based off of our interactions, you made some guesses that I might have been in somebody's school. I told you I got some schooling, so you trust me. But we can present whatever we want. God allows us to move forward, often without revealing the skeletons in our closets. And many of us are not sufficiently grateful. For if God were to expose everything about everybody,
It'd be an ugly place.
listen, it'd be an ugly place. Sometimes, out of His mercy and His grace, God said, I will allow you to let them think you're somebody. I praise God for that. I'll allow you to let them think you're somebody. I'll allow you to let them think you've always had it together. I'll allow them to let. I get surprised sometimes. People come, you come and say, man, are you talking about me? But then I realize, oh, they don't know. And they don't know because God did not expose my business. God did not put my mistakes on Front Street. There's some stuff that God don't broadcast. God doesn't talk about. God said, listen, I saw you, and that's between me and you. And we're going to keep it between me and you. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. That's the GPS recalculated. I'm going to let you live. You did it. You were it. We're going to start. You confessed. I'm going to forgive. And we're going to start the race from mile 10. When you get to the end of the marathon, we're going to give you a trophy just like everybody else. And we're going to keep it between me and you. And you didn't run all 26 miles. In the first 10, you were stumbling. Your race started at mile 10, but grace allows you to get the trophy like everybody else. Amen? We all get to heaven, and some of us go squeak it in the last minute. Yeah. Listen, it's going to be a photo finish. But guess what? I don't care. So long as I get a man, I'm going to get the same mansion. I'm going to get the same starry crown. I'm going to get the same. We all the races, all the denominations, both the genders, everybody going to be there. We're going to be drinking from that same tree of life, walking them same streets of gold, and nobody's going to be looking for anybody else's resume. Nobody's going to be looking at anybody else's credit report. We're just going to be happy to be there. We're going to be happy that God recalculated. I ran just 1 mile of that marathon. I'm going to walk around with my medal just like everybody else because God is still good. That's God's grace recalculated. Sometimes, however, God won't do you like Matthew. You know, there are two tax collectors mentioned in the Gospels. Matthew and Zacchaeus. Matthew is sitting at the receipt of customs. He's doing his job collecting taxes when Jesus finds him. Jesus walks up to the table where he's collecting the folks' taxes. And he says, come follow me. Matthew leaves the tax booth. And you never hear of it again. Matthew now writing Gospels. There's a whole lot. You look at Matthew's name, his past doesn't come to mind. Zacchaeus took a very different road. Zacchaeus was such a scoundrel. Nobody wanted to fool with him. Also a tax collector. And all the tax collectors had to mark up. That's how they made their money. Okay. Just that Zacchaeus was exceptionally exorbitant. And people detested him for it. But if you owe 10% of taxes, I had to charge you 12. I take my 2%, I give the government their 10. That's how tax collecting worked. Zacchaeus was charging 20. But Zacchaeus took a different road. Sometimes God will take you down the Matthew road, he save you, you start walking with him. Sometimes take you down Zacchaeus' road. Zacchaeus said, listen, before you come to my house, here's what I'm going to promise. I got to go back to all those people that I did wrong. And I'm going to restore unto them 7 times.
Ouch.
Yeah, I'm going to go broke. Because I got rich off of them. Right? So I'm going to go broke. Now, restoring to everybody what I stole. And then I'm going to sign up with you. Jesus says, today salvation has come to your house. Some of us have some restitution to make. Or had some restitution to make. Some of us had to go back and say sorry. Some of us had to go back and repair some relationships. Some of us had to go back and humble yourself. Right? You don't get the privilege of just being saved and forgetting everything happened. Not everybody's Matthew. Some folks get saved like Zacchaeus. But the common denominator between Matthew and Zacchaeus was that Jesus found them both.
All right.
Do you hear what I said to you? Jesus found them both.
The shepherd.
The shepherd. The shepherd never gave up on either of those sheep. So, sometimes God will recalculate, give you the opportunity to get to where you are supposed to go without retracting your steps and reliving the pain of your past, like Matthew. Sometimes God will remind you of the original plan. And like Jonah, you still got to go to Nineveh. There's just no way around it. Either way, the good news is that the guidance system never stops working. It never shuts down or leaves you by yourself to figure it out. You are never left alone. You didn't follow the instructions then, but you have another opportunity to follow God's instructions now. One mistake doesn't have to lead to another. And one problem doesn't have to be compounded by another. There's plenty of road left on this journey. And the guidance system still works. God hasn't given up on you. He still intends to get you home.
All right.
Amen.
Amen.
And I had to share that one with you. That one's it means a lot to me. I carry it with me in my head and in my heart that even when I stray from God's very simple instructions, that I still have another opportunity to get it right. Sometimes I have to retrace my steps. Sometimes I get to go in a different direction. But either way, God doesn't leave me alone. Doesn't leave me alone. So let's go through these questions and then have our prayer. Has distraction ever caused you to stray from God's will for your life? I'll be the first to answer that one. Have I ever been distracted and strayed from God's will for my life? Of course I have. I have a feeling that everybody in this room has. We get so easily distracted because, we're just short-sighted. It's just who we are. The human brain can't really multitask. We can't focus on more than one thing properly at a time. It's just not how we are wired. And so there's God's will, and then like most babies, there's a little rattle, right? And the little shiny object, and when we start reaching for that shiny object, and there we go. That's how distraction works. So of course, next question, how did you recognize that you were distracted? How did you recognize that how do you recognize when you're distracted? Sometimes if I'm journaling this, I have to remind myself, sometimes I recognize that I'm distracted after the fact. When I can measure where I am against where I wanted to be or where I'm supposed to be, and I can notice that over time I'm far off base, and I feel like I need a redo. I feel like I need a do-over. That's when I know I've gotten distracted. Everybody in here has had that feeling. Where we measured where we are, where life is now, based off of where we wanted to be, or even still where God wanted us to be. We realized, wait a minute, I'm over here, and God wanted me over here. I'm over here, and the original intent was for me to be over there. That can take a lot of different directions. There are some folks who are working, who worked careers that were distractions.
Oh, yeah.
And you looked at where life ended up now, because you know sometimes the roads start off parallel, but then one begins to veer, and you keep following it, and after a while you say, wait a minute, I was supposed to be going that way, but at that last intersection, I took the fork in the road, and I'm all the way over here, when I fully intended to be over here. Some of us work careers that were distractions. Some of us actually were in relationships that were distractions. And slowly took you away from where you were supposed to be, where God intended for you to be. Some of us made some systematic errors in judgment that were distractions. And it slowly took you away from where you're supposed to be and where God intended for you to be. Over time, you can tell if you notice. Over time, you can tell if you're observant. You can tell how far off from God's will you veered. You can tell how far from God's ideal you are. And the good news is that you can not only tell how far you veered from His will, but you can also take steps to get back to where you're supposed to be. Amen? Amen. God doesn't leave you alone. He doesn't leave you stranded. He doesn't leave you lost. He takes you from where you are, and whether you have to retrace your steps or whether you take a shortcut, He takes you from where you are and puts you where you need to be. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Jesus. So have you gotten back on track? That's a personal question. And if not, today's a good day to get started, huh? It's never a bad time to get on track. Let me tell you something. There is no such thing as too late. There is no such thing as too late, too far gone, too old, too broken, too hurt. There is no such thing as any of that. You can start today. As a matter of fact, you can start right now. If you've got breath in your body, you got another chance. If you woke up this morning, that means you got opportunity. If you've got warm blood running through your veins, that means that you got another chance. And whether today is the only other chance you ever get, you can use it. Huh? If today is the only other chance you ever get, you can use today. You can surrender today. You can get it right today. You can turn it over here today, so that if you don't even get tomorrow, you can die tonight saying, you know what? at least I made the most of today. I might have wasted 69 plus years, but I made the most of today. Might not be able to account for all the decades that I wasted, but guess what? By God's grace, I made the most of today. Because there's no such thing as too late if you got now. You understand what I'm saying? There's no such thing as too late if you've got now. All right. If you don't remember nothing else, remember that. We give up too soon. And we give up on God too soon. You busy telling God how old you are. And God telling you, I'm going to give you more time. I gave you now. I'm going to give you tomorrow. You don't know what my calendar is. You might need to get comfortable because I might have you out here for another 30 years. You acting tired like you ready to give up. God said, wait, no, I ain't started with you yet. Caleb was 85 years old. They got into the promised land. Joshua is divvying out portions. Caleb said, listen, I don't know how much longer I have, but I have now. Give me this mountain. 85 years old, give me this mountain. He said, no, me and my family, we're going to go, we're going to fight. I still got a little something left in me. We're going to go fight him, and I'm taking that mountain for myself. And he sure did. After 40 years in the wilderness wasted, walking around with children of Israel. He didn't lament that he wasted 40 years of his life. No. When he got to the promised land 40 years later than he should have, he said, listen, I may be late, but it ain't too late. Huh? Look at Caleb. I may be late, but it ain't too late. Give me that mountain. I'm going to finish what I should have started 40 years ago. All right. Listen, y'all didn't call me to preach. We call me a Bible study. We're going to cut the preaching out. We leave that for later. List 3 things that keep us from following God's instructions. How can you remove those obstacles from your life? This is an introspective list. I've got a list of, you've got a list of, and I encourage you to do it in the quiet of your own journal, in the quiet of your own mind, because there's some things that we don't acknowledge as distractions that actually are. And so I did not use the word list 3 distractions. I phrased it intentionally. List 3 things that keep us from following God's instructions. God's instructions, I did not limit them. I didn't say God's commandments, right? I didn't say list 3 things that keep you from following the 10 commandments, because most of us in here are okay when it comes to that. But what are God's instructions for your life? And what are 3 things that keep you from following his instructions, right? So he may have instructed you to forgive somebody. What are the 3 things that are keeping you from following his instruction?
Not forgiveness.
Yeah. He may be instructing you to begin a project, make a move, go in a different direction, different relocation, whatever it is. What are the 3 things that are keeping you from following God's way? Is it fear? Is it finance? Is it not knowing the future? Is it comfort? Is it convenience? Is it rebellion? What is it that's keeping you from following God's will? Because if you can identify it, you can conquer it.
Okay.
Right? But if I never intentionally identify, I am afraid. That's why I don't do this. Okay? I don't know how. Ignorance could be keeping me. For a long time. For a long time. I've been transparent with you guys over the last four weeks. We might as well not stop now. For a long time, ignorance kept me from following God's instructions when it came to my money. Okay? I didn't know how. Okay? So I'm one of those guys. I click past CNBC. Right? I don't understand what those numbers are on the bottom of the screen. So I click past that. Right? Well, those are the stocks. Those are the stock prices falling and rising.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh.
But see, I didn't know. I had no idea. And see, I didn't grow up in a home where I had anybody to teach me. Right? I grew up in a home where they robbed Peter to pay Paul, and they hustled. Right? And so I saw my relatives come in and dump money on the kitchen counter and count stacks. I didn't see nobody invest nothing, but you couldn't take that to the bank. Later on, I found out that it was in the kitchen for a reason, right? You couldn't take it to the bank because they were asking where you got it from, and we weren't prepared to answer those questions. That's just the life. That's the way life was. That's the way life was. So that's what I grew up seeing. I grew up seeing folks come to my parents' driveway and hook the car up to the tow truck and haul it off. That was normal for me. Right? So we had the car for a little while, and then they came and took the car. I didn't know that's what they call repossession. Right? I didn't know that. Right? That was normal for me. I grew up in a life where all of a sudden, my parents came home one day, and there were a bunch of new credit card offers. And said, well, man, everybody offering us a credit card. What happened? Well, what I didn't know is that they had declared bankruptcy. And when you declare bankruptcy, the card companies target you because they're helping you, quote unquote, rebuild your credit. Right? So that's the kind of life I live. So I grew up into adulthood. I didn't know what to do with money. Right? So what kept me from prosperity? What kept me in debt? Ignorance. Not understanding, well, okay, first of all, do you really need that credit card? Second of all, do you really need all those credit cards? Thirdly, are you looking at the interest rate of those credit cards? You just sign your name on paper and you go on to the store. How much are you paying back? 29%. Well, there you go. See, so they were getting me. They get me for 29% ignorance. Right? I'm sitting in an apartment thinking, man, I could never own a home. And I'm not realizing that there are first-time home buyers programs out there. There's all kinds of credit repair. I didn't even know you could write letters to the credit companies and challenge things on your score. I had no idea. I just thought when I got there, I didn't know what those numbers meant. You just tell me I have a 5 something, okay. What does that mean to me? I had no idea that everything I paid for in life was being governed by those numbers. Right? So now I had to list ignorance, coming full circle, as one of the things keeping me from following God's instructions. What are God's instructions? A good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children.
There you go.
God's instructions. So what I cannot do now is leave them to build.
Oh, it's easy to say, but hard.
It's hard, man. Listen, that thing is tight, boy. Because now I'm starting to look now as a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. That means I got to start with life insurance.
There you go.
Oh, because I can't just leave them the bill in the body. That's not God's instructions.
And the premiums.
Right? Right. I got to handle my business. Right? But if ignorance and fear and all those other things that I don't identify keep me from following God's instructions, I'll always be where I am versus where God wants me to be. I'll get distracted and I'll get lost. Final few questions. How can you remove these obstacles from your life? Step by step. Right? So I'm wanting you here not only to list the distractions, but also write out the plan. What am I going to do? I started tuning into a guy by the name of Dave Ramsey. Okay? And I started listening to him, Financial Peace University. Started looking for him online. I got his podcast, I got his books, and started reading and listening to everything he had to say. And a lot of what he had to say hurt my heart. It hurt my heart. But I said, okay, I got to figure this stuff out. Pretty soon, when I first started listening, I was overwhelmed. I had to turn it off. There's too many terms I don't understand. Right? Too much nomenclature in there, too much jargon in there that I'm not familiar with. But as I spent more time, it began to become clearer and clearer to me. And I began to get more and more comfortable with it. And now guess what? The ignorance is leaving. Now I realize, oh, okay, I should have an emergency fund. All right. I probably need to leave some of these credit cards alone. You know, okay, I'll put them in a Ziploc bag, and we'll put them in some water, and we'll freeze them. I ain't gonna close the account, but I'm gonna freeze them so I can't always get to them. What I get. The ignorance is starting to leave. But see, that's the plan. How can you remove these obstacles from your life? That's the plan. Step by step. I'm writing out the plan, and I'm executing the plan. So I can start following God's instructions for my life. Have you received a second chance to follow God's instructions? Yes, I have. How do I know I received a second chance? Because I saw the sunrise this morning. Because we talking this morning. We talking this afternoon. Right? So that's how I know it's not, I may be late, but it's never too late. Mistakes. Right? I just outlined you one, right? So I'm in search of information, so I don't repeat the same mistakes. Now I'm getting into the habit, a personal habit now. I'm seeking out older people to talk to, right? Rehoboam and Jeroboam. Go back and read that story in the Old Testament. After Solomon dies, his son decides he's going to get some advice. And his son did what I used to do. Call your boys. Sit around and say, what should I do? And stupid is talking to stupid, and talking to stupid, and talking to stupid, and talking to stupid, and stupid just going all around the table, sharing stupid. And nobody know what they're talking about, right? Right? But then the wise counselors come in. Some older men come in and say, listen, we've been around this thing for a little while. Let me help you, son. This is what you say to the people. And he listened to his boys and lost 10 out of 12 tribes of Israel. Listening to his boys. Right? I'm making it a personal habit now. Let me find some folks who've actually done this thing. You've been married for 40 years. Let me close my mouth for a minute. You tell me, what does a man do to stay with a woman for 40 years? You tell me. Hey, I probably need to write that down, right? I need to write that down. Because it's a step toward me not making the same mistakes. I ain't trying to get married and get divorced again. What sense does that make? Right? So why don't I find out from somebody, a couple of somebody, what does it take? You gotta write your plan. What am I doing? Am I going back to school? Am I making some phone calls? Am I going to network? Am I going to pray about it? Am I going to fast? Am I going to start listening? Do I need to go to counseling? Do I need to go to therapy? Do I need to talk to somebody? Do I need to start? What steps are you taking to ensure you don't repeat the same mistakes? Who are we praying for? You let their names out for me so we can pray for them. Right. Let's put their names in the atmosphere. Who else? All right, shout your name out. Thelma! She put her name in the atmosphere. Amen. Who else? Audley. Pray for Ollie. Yes, yes. We're putting her name in the atmosphere. Who else's name? Who else's name?
Pray had to use my phone.
Oh, hey, what's your name, darling? What's your name?
Pearl Samuels.
Pearl.
Learn how to use.
Amen. Amen. Pearl, we're praying for you and that phone, girl. Because listen, sometimes it's difficult for me. Sometimes there's stuff that folks do on these phones that they can rule the world from this thing here. I've gotten texting and Facebook and that's about it. So, who else? Who else we praying for? Put a name out there. Gladys. Gladys. We're putting Gladys' name out. We're putting Gladys' name out. Yes. What else? What are we praying about? Just put a situation out there. I'm gonna put one. Our community. What else? What else are we praying about?
Mankind, for all these evil.
Human beings, yes, human beings and all the evil in the world. The evil in the world. The victims of the fires.
Yeah.
Right? Just because they're not front page news anymore doesn't mean the house still ain't burned down. Right? So we want to pray for victims of the fires. What else? Yes. Put it out in the atmosphere. What else we pray about? It's church. It's church, right? Our church family and our pastor and the leadership of this church. We're praying for this church. What else we praying about? Health. We want to add family to that. We want to add finances to that. I'm going to give you another one since my last week here with you. The holidays are coming up. Okay, so I'm praying not only for health, but I'm going to add something to it. I'm praying for mental health. There's some folks that have some difficult times during the holidays. Missing loved ones, empty seats at the table. All that stuff needs to be addressed. I'm praying God's comfort for them. Mental health as well. Yes, can I pray for you? Let's bow our heads together. Heavenly Father, you've heard the request we put into the atmosphere. We thank you for being a God who hears. Yes. We also thank you for being a God who keeps his word. I will never leave you nor forsake you. You are there whether we're on track. You are there when we get off track. And you're there at all points in between. We ask that you would continually guide us.
Yes.
Guide us so that we don't keep repeating the same mistakes. Guide us so that we walk in your will for our lives. Guide us so that even those who have made mistakes can find themselves restored. Remind us that even though we may be late, by your grace, it's never too late to be able to walk in your will. And God bless us, we pray. Bless us not only tangibly, but God bless us with copious amounts and constant reminders of our faith and your grace. We thank you for hearing this prayer, and we offer it to you in Jesus' name. Amen. And amen. It was my pleasure, ladies and gentlemen. I love you. Thank you so very much for having me. God bless you. Absolutely. All right, let's start bring it home, man. Got to be back. Got to be back.
Okay, y'all know it's transparent.
Yeah, like a minute there.